Hey, welcome back to the Unbelievable Podcast. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald, and today we are taking a look at your Minnesota Vikings and how they square up with the Arizona Cardinals, who, coming off of week one, and the performance that they put on last week, this might be an interesting matchup here. So we're going to do our best here to identify some key factors here, some key players, some guys that are really, in my mind, probably going to cause some headaches this weekend for the Vikings, and potentially how to stop them, what we would do, as people that have no idea what we're talking about in that regard. And then we'll do our picks for the week. So that's basically the plan. We'll do a general preview like we typically do, go through some key players, spout some nonsense, us. So
Sure.
that's the game plan. Let's hop right into it here. So like I said, Arizona last week, incredibly, outstanding.
This is the scariest the Cardinals have been in my lifetime, I think. I'm serious. I can't think of a time that they've been scarier in my lifetime. Like I know they went to the Super Bowl that year with Kurt Warner, but they were like an 8-18 or whatever, and they made that.
They were pretty dangerous offensively then. I think that the difference here is, ironically enough, the quarterback, because Kurt Warner is of course a Hall of Famer, but because of what Kyler Murray brings to the table in terms of being a dynamic two-dimensional quarterback, I think that's really what makes them look that much scarier. Because if you think about that team with Warner, that was Bolden.
They had Larry Fitz, they had Bolden, they had weapons 100%. I remember that. I remember Fitz had the all-time playoff performance that year in those 4 games or whatever. It was like 150 yards a game or whatever. Right. But in a way that kind of mirrors, I don't know, I'm not trying to compare prime Fitz to Hopkins. I don't think that's fair, but Hopkins is, he's a stud too. And so
the same type of ball game. I think that's a fair comparison.
I mean, it is. It can be. I just think that level that Fitz got to in those playoffs was prime Megatron, on another level. But so people that have been listening to this show know I've been high on the Titans, which is why I'm so scared of the Cardinals now, because I'm a big Titans fan. I've loved what they put together. I think Tannehill's been underrated. I think they've had some very underrated skill pieces outside of Henry, and to see them get completely wiped away on their home field yesterday or last week was kind of nuts. And Kyler Murray looked like a video game. When you make a creative player and you turn him up to 99 speed and agility all the time at quarterback, you just run around the backfield juking people out. That's what he was doing to that defense, and then throwing the ball 25 yards down the field accurately. So I don't know how this is going to go. I do not like the Vikings' chances though, because they have not been good against mobile quarterbacks before.
Right. So that's an easy identifiable trait or discernible instance that we've had on numerous occasions throughout the Zimmer era. He struggles against mobile quarterbacks for one reason or another. Kyler Murray is certainly that. Again, I'm going to pat myself on the back again. I think I pointed to this being, a potential breakout type season for Arizona. And Kyler Murray is the face of all of that, right? If you believe in Arizona being more than just a one-game wonder against a quality opponent, you probably also believe in Kyler Murray and his potential as a pocket passer, and also his ability to get outside the pocket and throw on the run with, laser accuracy, downfield 30, 40 yards. It's a number of different skills, but what it comes down to is if you believe in Arizona, you believe in Kyler Murray. And this is a tough situation, especially with Anthony Barr potentially on the shelf once again, because in recent memory, what we've been able to say on this show, and easily kind of or more confidently than maybe other teams might have been able to say, that we've got a guy that can spy the quarterback effectively in terms of athleticism, length, and just natural awareness. And that's been Anthony Barr. In his absence, Eric Kendricks as well. The way that this team is built, though, in Arizona, with all of the pieces that they have in addition to Kyler Murray, makes it that much more difficult to put a guy like Eric Kendricks on Kyler Murray alone when you do not have Anthony Barr. So spying the quarterback is so much harder when you have, like you said, DeAndre Hopkins, who, let's not put him on Fitz's level just yet, but he's certainly heading in that direction, right? You've got Christian Kirk, who's the potential breakout player, I feel like, every year, but last week certainly looked like a world beater. You've got AJ Green, who's kind of fallen apart a little bit. I think that he's on his last limb, but he's certainly a guy that's going to take the defense away and force you to cover him. He's still good enough to catch the football and make plays in that regard. And then you've got Kyler Murray, rolling through and basically orchestrating the entire thing. That's a dangerous thing where you basically have to match up one-on-one across the board in man
so that
coverage
was
with safeties over the top.
Because that was the question that we're going to try to answer we're going to kind of like try to speak into existence some sort of a plan here. But like,
right.
So my first thought was what yours was like, okay, just spy Eric Kendricks on him. And the more I think about it, I still like, that's what I want to do, because like, despite all of the weapons that you just laid out and the different avenues that, Murray has to distribute the football, I still think he would be less comfortable if there's just a spy like Kendricks, someone as athletic as Kendricks, right in front of him, staring at him every play, than if the Vikings were to go out and double nuke or whatever the case might be. So if I'm the Vikings, I'm just taking my chances. I'm like, all right, every second and long, every third and medium to long, I'm spying Eric Kendricks on Kyler Murray, no matter what. And then of course, if I'm Zimmer, I'm putting together blitz packages, whatever the case might be, to try and disguise things. But that's the only solution I have, I think, because I don't see the Vikings pass rush being effective enough to get home or at least collapse the pocket efficiently enough to where there's no out for Murray. I think he'll get out and make plays. So that's why I think you spy Kendricks, you take your chances. You're going to give up plays. You just are. With sort of the I guess strategy that I'm kind of referring to here, creating in my mind. But you're going to give up those yards. You just have to trust your offense that sounds scary now. You have to trust the Vikings offense, though, to kind of put up 30 plus points and win this game. I think that's the only chance they have.
Okay, so a couple of things here that when you look at the full scope of the Arizona Cardinals offense, there's a couple things of note here. First of all, their key weaknesses or places where they do not have strengths is probably a more fair, assessment here. The tight end position is Max Williams, former Golden Gopher. I'm sure everyone's aware of who he is. He has not had a great professional career. He's not a difference maker, I would say. I think that's fair. I don't think I'm, disregarding any level of talent there. I think he's
probably replaceable.
That's a good way to put it. Perfect. And then your running back is Chase Edmonds. So those are your two probably weakest.
Who I love, by the way. I love Chase Edmonds. I think he's been underutilized the last few years. I think he's better than Kenyon Drake.
Okay.
And should have been getting, but I'm probably on an island there. So
anyways, so if you point to those two guys as your greatest weaknesses, it does make it a little more acceptable to assign a linebacker to Kyler Murray, because in theory, right, your linebackers are going to be the ones that would be in charge of covering a running back out of the backfield or a tight end that's sprinting downfield. So I think you're right that in theory, you basically have to dedicate a player, whether that's Anthony Barr if he plays or Eric Kendricks, to Kyler Murray, and just basically keeping him within the constraints of, I don't want to say the pocket, but maybe a little bit over shifted to the pocket, right? Like keep them within striking distance of your defensive line. Because what you were saying earlier is, I think they're going to get pressure based off of what I saw from Michael Pierce last week, based off of what I saw from Danielle Hunter. I think they're going to be able to collapse the edge on occasion, and I think they're going to be able to get pass rush up the middle. The problem is that once you flush the pocket, Murray can still escape, and it's not going to be a negative play. It could be, a throwaway. It could be a 2 or 3 yard gain, something of that nature. He turns negative 7-8 yard plays into, net positives given the circumstances. That's his game. So if you could keep him within the constraints of the pocket plus maybe one more lineman over in terms of width, right? You're going to give yourself a much better shot here, because the biggest strengths that he has as a passer, in addition to just the raw talent in being able to throw the ball accurately downfield, are his vision as a passer, being able to kind of go through his progressions while moving, which is ridiculous, by the way, to be going through progressions while escaping the pocket. He does this as well as anyone. And secondly, is throwing on the run once he's extended the play. Once he's got his guys like Hopkins, who are not just great players, they're also smart players who diagnose the situation and see he's scrambling out to his right. All right, I'm going to move over here. I know they're in cover too. I'm going to find that soft spot, dart downfield. That's what Arizona does as well as anyone in the NFL. So if you can keep Kyler Murray from extending the play to that 5, 6, 7 second mark, and you keep him within kind of range of the pocket, you're going to have a much better chance here to slow down this offense and force them to be, handing the football off, establishing a running game where Chase Edmonds, you said you like him as a player, and I think there is talent there, but relative to what else they have
Yeah,
on the
I mean,
field, I will take those carries
I
all
don't.
day long.
I wouldn't want him being my bell cow running back, but I like him as a pass catcher and a kind of a safety check down option for a guy. I think he's very reliable in that sense. But anyway, point being, I kind of like, I think you want, when it's a mobile quarterback, you want the guy to be as uncomfortable as possible. And what we've talked about in the past with Rodgers in Green Bay is it's not like these are like these types of quarterbacks. You rush the passer differently, because one of the things that knocks on Jared Allen, for as dominant as he was in Minnesota for most of his tenure, he was very aggressive going kind of almost north to south when he would rush the passer, where he would get really, his stance would be way out wide and he'd go way kind of outside to get to the quarterback and go very vertically. And a lot of times that would create avenues for the quarterback to escape. And so there's that element where against Rodgers, you simply can't do that. And this is another guy with Murray that you have to be very careful about, being too aggressive going up the field when you rush the passer. And suddenly there's a wide open lane there for him to extend that play. And then it makes it really difficult on your defensive backfield to cover DeAndre Hopkins for 5 seconds. Exactly. So that's why I think I would imagine Andre Patterson will institute, some sort of a more disciplined approach this week that might not result in a lot of sack numbers. And I frankly, you're playing Kyler Murray, so you're probably not going to get a lot of sacks anyway, but an approach where you kind of want him to just kind of almost sit in the pocket and almost become more fidgety in there and be a little bit more anxious because he has to stay in there because there's no escape route. And from there, I think that'll make things a little bit easier where he'll get a little bit rattled. I think that's the best play. Plus, if you have that spy there, he can't go anywhere. And it's putting a lot of pressure on your DBs, but I think that's the only route that you really have right now, just given how much firepower there is and how quickly a guy like Murray with his athleticism can change the game.
Absolutely. And that's another element here that we really haven't touched on a whole lot. Is just the fact that, a lot of these players on this offense are the type of guys that can change the game in the blink of the eye, right? Murray is a quick strike player. That might mean a 40-yard rush that just these chunk yardage plays, right? You have to be very careful of this team going over the top. And after what Bashaud Breeland did last week, it is a little bit concerning who's going to be able to cover that other side. We know that Patrick Peterson is going to be covering one side of the field. That's basically how the Vikings did it last week, right? Patrick Peterson was on one side, Bashaud Breeland was on the other. I believe it was Chris Boyd that came in and played the majority of the time when Breeland was out. That's how the Vikings operated. So if you can, feel comfortable with Patrick Peterson, I don't want to say shutting down one side of the field, but slow, like very much slowing, managing more than managing. I think he's got to be better than managing, because that they're going to establish Peterson on one side. And unless they have him travel, which they didn't do last week, different situation, but we'll see. If they keep him on one side, eventually Hopkins is going to move over to the other, and they're going to try to get they're going to try to get a winning matchup. So ultimately, it depends on what Zimmer wants to do. I think you have to have Peterson travel this week. I think it's a different situation where if you take
revenge
Hopkins
game
out,
too.
I suppose. Yeah, it's an important game.
I suppose he says. I don't know if it's a revenge game for him per se. I'm just playing my former team. Happened to be, I don't think
it's always kind of a revenge game though. Like we point that out as a joke, but like on a personal level, like he wants to win, right? And he wants to be the best player on the defense. So I would have him travel in this situation, because the other side of the field, if you just flip, you take your greatest defensive asset, at least with regard to coverage, and you lock him down on Christian Kirk all day, I think that's not your best distribution of resources this week. Last week, there wasn't necessarily a key, like a true number one. So you could just put Peterson on one side of the field and he'd take Higgins, or he'd take, Jamar Chase, whoever was there with him at the time. This is a different situation. So I think you have to have him travel, hope that he gets the best out of, Hopkins, maybe keep him without a touchdown, under 75 yards, something like that. I think that puts you in a better situation to compete with this team, because we know the Vikings can score 20 plus points. It's just, can you hold the Cardinals to under 30? That's my real question here.
Right. And Peterson isn't that shutdown guy anymore to me. And
he has to be this week. He does.
That's a scary thought. And, it's not like he can't be a good player. I just don't think he's put him on Hopkins for a game and don't worry about anything else. I still think you got to give him help. I would still, have almost bracketed coverage, whether it's Smith or Woods kind of over the top on that side of the field. Have that extra help over there for him. And, then I think at the rest of the line, I think you kind of leave those guys on an island. So Christian Kirk against maybe it's Breland, maybe it's Boyd, whoever else is out there, Mackenzie Alexander, those guys should be on an island against, it's going to be AJ Green and Christian Kirk, those guys. But and there's some talent on that team. They got more too. So
yeah,
there's
touch on Rondale Moore.
Rondale Moore is electric too. So there's a lot of firepower there. It makes me scared. I just think it starts with the quarterback. You got to first neutralize the quarterback if you can. Try to get him off his game a little bit. And I think doing that is by, being a little bit more disciplined with your pass rush, spying him when it's appropriate, right? When you have those, you got to get 8 yards, or it's a second and long, third down, spy him, make him uncomfortable. And then you're going to have to take your chances with these kind of one-on-one matchups that are created on the outside, whether that's in zone or whether it's in man. Either way, it's your guy against another guy in that scenario, in those key spots. And you're just gonna have to win enough of those to keep the Cardinals offense at bay.
So ultimately, this kind of comes down to make Kyler Murray as much of a pocket passer, a true pocket passer as he can.
And it's not even like he's a bad pocket passer. It's just like he's just so scary. Option. He's just so scary outside of the pocket, Absolutely. Moving around with his feet.
You just don't want him to extend plays. That's what this comes down to. Don't allow the Cardinals to extend offensive plays to that point where they're running wild. And then you're going to give yourself a shot. That's really what this comes down to. I think the Vikings will be able to get enough of a pass rush. Like I said, try to hold the key playmakers in place and you're going to have a chance. Offensively, you'd think, right? You think that if you're able to hold this team to 24, 27 points, the Vikings offense should be able to get something done against this defense, which we'll take a look at here in a second. I do want to point out real quick that while we were talking about defensive backs, this is probably a good time to note that Cam Dantzler is on the trading block apparently and was inquired about by the San Francisco 49ers. So there is something wrong there, guys. Like it's not just me screaming and yelling. Like I think we're on to something. Like it's not just smoke now. It's like the teams are kind of like, hey, what's going on? Can we get this guy? So was inactive last week.
Yeah, and we don't know what's going on behind the scenes.
By the way, too. Like you need Cameron Dantzler in this type of situation. Breland is banged up, also failed miserably in coverage last week against Chase. I don't like his odds against Kirk, who is not the same level of talent, but same caliber, same style.
He was effective last week.
Certainly was. Dangerous situation. You'd love to have Dantzler out there, but okay. Anyways, let's go to the defensive side of the ball for Arizona and how are Kirk Cousins and the Vikings going to get something done here. The obvious thing. Okay, so the obvious thing here, first and foremost, Chandler Jones, let's just point to the elephant in the room. Chandler Jones, of course, had 5 sacks on Taylor Lewan and the Tennessee Titans last week, a couple forced fumbles. He was an absolute world beater. It was on the level of, Von Miller in the postseason a couple of years ago with Peyton Manning. He absolutely destroyed Tennessee and gave them no chance to win that football game because of, just the damage that he did to Taylor Lewan. It wasn't just the sacks, it was the pressures as well, right? So if that's a repeatable thing, if that's a repeatable thing, the Vikings are going to lose this football game almost for sure. Now, the easy solution, of course, is don't give up those numbers in terms of pressures. Don't give up those sack numbers. Don't give up those significant turnovers. The answer here is that there really isn't an answer to just straight up not do that again. You just kind of hope that he comes back down to earth. There's no expectation that anyone is going to get 5 sacks every week. I don't think Chandler Jones is any different, but even if he gets 2, he's going to be destroying the Vikings offense. So this is your number one key factor here, folks. Like you don't have to go much further than the defensive line versus the Vikings offensive line. If Chandler Jones does what he did last week, again, this week, keeping in mind, of course, he has not signed a contract extension. He is fighting for every dollar and cent at this moment. If he does that again, the Vikings will lose this football game, no doubt in my mind. So how do you neutralize this guy? What strategy do you take on? Because this is square one. Like if you don't stop him, it's over immediately.
So first thing I think of, and it's something the Vikings did hardly any of last week, play action, get that involved. And I don't care if the run's effective or if it's not early on. This is, I think, a mistake too that kind of contributed to the Vikings last week. Play action is proven. If you look at the numbers, it's effective whether the run's working that day or not. It just is. it's instinct for linebackers to sync up a little bit when they see that run action. And the result is more openings. Plus, on top of that, move the pocket around. And by that, when you do play action, roll it out to the left, roll it out to the right. Remember how like absurdly good Kirk was throwing to his left? Was it 2 years ago? When he had just some outrageously efficient numbers rolling to his left out play action. What happened to that? Why is that? Has that suddenly gone away? Has Kirk suddenly become bad at that? So I think those are things, and that's just that doesn't really necessarily go for this game in particular. That's just a general rule of thumb. I think this offense can be so much better with more of that implemented. And that'll get Kirk more comfortable. That'll get him out in space. That'll neutralize the pass rush. It'll make it easier on your offensive lineman. So that's the first thing I would do. And then in turn, that just in general, that'll neutralize any elite pass rusher. Like play action away from that side of the field. Play action even to that side of the field. It's going to make him a little bit more hesitant to be so aggressive rushing the passer. Then you get in some screens, some draw plays, and suddenly you can go almost wherever you want to. So there's ways to do it. I just think the Vikings need to trust that these things will work. Get back to these things that have worked for Kirk and for this weak offensive line in the past, and get back to those things I think that they got away from last week.
Right. So first of all, play action. It's a simple answer, right? Like I think everyone's aware of what play action is and how the effect that it can have, right? But the effect that it can have on this specific team and what Arizona tries to do defensively extends beyond just Chandler Jones, right? Like it's not just about that extra second where Chandler Jones is thinking and not pass rushing. It's also that, the step in the ground that a guy like, Budda Baker has to take, right? A guy that moves all over the formation. Isaiah Simmons as well, a guy that literally plays to a degree at every level of the defense. It's these guys that are moved all around the formation that are so dangerous. And when those guys have to take that extra step as well, or that extra second to think, or that millisecond to kind of figure out, all right, which way am I going to attack? What's my attack angle here? Which gap is going to open up? And do I have to even stop, do I have to stop Dalvin Cook on this play? All of those questions asked, right? That's all important for slowing down this defense and what they try to do. They're going to try to confuse you with a lot of different looks. They're going to try to confuse you with a lot of different playmakers, right? It's not just Chandler Jones. He was the guy last week. We haven't even mentioned the fact that J.J. Watt is on this team as well. Marcus Golden had established himself as an excellent pass rusher last year as well. There's a lot of different guys that are going to be put into blitz packages and roles where they're going to be kind of the key rusher in the specific play here. But ultimately what it comes down to is I think what you do here is you try to stop Chandler Jones, and in doing so with your packages, you're in theory slowing down the rest of the defense too. So when you hand off to Dalvin Cook on the first play on 1st and 10 when the Vikings start with the football, I'm going to be okay with that move. Establish that motion, establish the fact that the Vikings are going to try to run the ball immediately, but get back into that mode like Drew was saying. Get that play action passing going. Don't do these long developing plays. I know a lot of you guys probably saw the 7-step drop that ended up in being a 3-yard catch by the Vikings last week.
Unreal.
Ridiculous. No 7-step drops this week. No long developing plays, at least early. Like you're going to have to take shots deep, but early on, do not let Chandler Jones take advantage immediately. 3-step drops, quick hitters, get the ball out of your hands quickly, and hope to God that Dalvin Cook can get going early, because if he can't do that, if you get into a situation where you become one-dimensional, where you have allowed Arizona to score a couple touchdowns, Dalvin Cook isn't getting enough chunk yardage to merit giving him the football. Again, you're in a very tough position. You're putting yourself at the mercy of these pass rushers, and of course, Chandler Jones. Rashad Hill, like if that's the matchup all day, I don't love the Vikings odds in that situation.
No, and that's everybody. Now, I think it's to a degree we should talk about. I've used this term before, but like law of averages and kind of regression, and not likely that Chandler Jones has 5 sacks again. And I'm sure if you look back at the film, there's probably a couple of those sacks that fell into his lap, right? But point being, he's still a force to be reckoned with, still the force to be reckoned with on this defense. And it's, we should also mention, like, Brian O'Neill's a damn good tackle. Like, he's a very good pass protector. He's a top 5 pass protector at that right tackle spot in the NFL. He was a 97% pass block win rate last week. I know
there's only 3 guys that did that, right?
Yeah, Ali Udo was among the top 10, I believe, of guards last week as well in that number. So It's not like the Vikings are totally in shambles when it comes to pass protection. It's just, this is another scary one. And you got to execute that too. You just have to. And I think getting your quarterback into a rhythm early with some of that moving the pocket around and play action will really, really help.
Absolutely. And keep in mind too that the interior defensive line for the Arizona Cardinals, right? Like the big nose tackle and the force that the way that they try to operate in Vance Joseph's defense, that's not their strength, right? Interior pass rush is not going to be something that they're going to dominate at. I think that there's the potential for JJ Watt to potentially be a factor in that regard, but it's going to be exterior pass rush that for the most part from this team, right? And the Vikings' weakness, at least on their offensive line as it stands today, is Garrett Bradbury and Ezra Cleveland probably. So keep that in mind, that ultimately what it's going to come down to is how consistent can Rashad Hill be operating within a scheme that's suiting the Vikings' needs in this game specifically, right? The offensive attack plan has to help out these offensive linemen, right? Like you have to be, you can't be doing 7-step drops is really what it comes down to, is efficient plays, quick hitters. And then when you're going to take a shot, make sure that that shot isn't going to take too long to develop, right? No play action deep passing on the 7th play of this game, because you're going to get smoked and the Vikings are going to be in trouble. So, all right. With all that being said now, as we move into our picks for the week here, we'll start, of course, with this game. We said a lot. I think both of us have, suggested significant concerns about this game, and I think we've, essentially outright said that we're kind of leaning Cardinals in this one. Is that your final answer for the Vikings' chances this week? Do they get stomped by the Cardinals?
See, I think yes, and I it's unfortunate because I also think this is a must-win game. And I think that because, and now maybe you can kind of give your take on that when when you're making your pick, but I think it's a must-win game just because of the Viking schedule, start things off. I think things could be quickly derailed. Then you get, Seattle and Cleveland after that, right, for on the schedule, and suddenly 0-4 looks extremely possible. So I think this is the most winnable of the next 3 games, and I think you have to go do it. Otherwise, it's going to get ugly. And so with that being said, I think it's a must-win game to save kind of your season and your playoff hopes. And I don't think they get it done. I think Arizona's got too much firepower. I think it's a lot to ask for what we kind of described for both sides of the ball for the Vikings to get this win. So I got Arizona, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's not particularly close. But do you think this is a must-win game? And then your pick.
So, is it a must-win game mathematically? No.
Well, no,
because a lot can happen between now and remember, we do get an extra week this season. So there are some things that can happen even if the Vikings do lose this game. I don't think they're out because of what happened last week too. So I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no to it's being must win.
Fair enough. The NFC North looks like it's in shambles right now.
That's the only reason, though. That's the only reason. What you just said about the schedule, the upcoming schedule, right? That's super important here in this situation, because it's not just losing to Arizona. It's having to go home and play Seattle. Then you have to stay at home and play Cleveland. So, I mean, I guess you are at home, but your schedule does not get easier until you get Detroit and Carolina in the middle of October. So if you screw up here against Arizona and put yourself at 0-2, heading into a home stretch, thank goodness, but very tough opponents that I think Vegas will favor, even though they are playing on the road. You're in a significant hole, even with what might happen again this week, being potentially in Green Bay being the only NFC North team that wins. That's the only thing that keeps the Vikings alive, is the fact that the rest of the NFC North is not doing its job either. So I'm going to pick Arizona. I think that the Vikings are going to lose this game. I think I don't personally think it's going to be particularly close. And what I mean by that is I think it's probably 13-point differential.
Yeah,
something like that. I think the Vikings will have a shot. And I think if some of these things bounce the right way, it could be potentially closer, or, even push the Vikings into a situation where they could win. But there were so many what ifs in our conversation today. There were so many things like, okay, if you can slow down Chandler Jones, if you can keep Kyler Murray in the pocket, if you can get the maximum amount of Patrick Peterson, all of these ifs are just, I lean in favor of the Cardinals there. And those are, key X factor matchups that are going to decide the outcome of this football game. So I can't pick the Vikings here. I have to pick the Cardinals. That being said, I think that Green Bay, we're going to get to this later, but I think that Green Bay is going to beat Detroit. I think Cincinnati is going to beat Chicago. So ultimately, you might only be one game back heading into next week with the potential to start over against Seattle. So is it the worst case scenario? Is it must win? I'm not going to go that far, but this is very important, and I don't think they're going to get it done. We're going to have to reassess that question next week as well, I think.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, I just see this as the most winnable of the next three. So
it definitely is that.
I mean, win this one. If 0-4, that's not going to be good enough.
Yeah, 0-4. The Vikings did it last year. We saw how that happened, right? So this is as I will say this. This is as needed of an early season game as the Vikings have had in recent memory. That's fair. I'll go that. That's how far I'll go.
Sure.
It's a very important win for the Vikings, and unfortunately, both Drew and I are not not picking them here. So hopefully they prove us wrong. That's always the goal, anyways, right? All right. Rest of the picks this week now. Last week, not very good. 7-9 for both Drew and I. A lot of things developed last week that we weren't expecting. Whether that was Philadelphia being a lot better, the Saints. Of course, beating Green Bay, Steelers over Buffalo, right? I had the sexy pick and taking Arizona over Tennessee, and Drew took Miami over New England. So some of those, but then of course you end the week with Baltimore losing to the Vegas Raiders on that crazy ending. And both of us went 7-9. So we'll try to do better this week. So both of us are on Arizona for your home matchup against the Vikings. Starting in the NFC East here, Thursday night football. That is the New York Giants and Washington football.
I know who you're picking.
Yeah, I am picking
Washington.
I'm very confident.
I'm rolling with Heineke too. I think they have the quarterback advantage in this game because Danny Dimes hasn't shown a whole lot. So I'm going to go Washington.
Taylor Heineke has been granted finally this opportunity that I suggested years ago that he would ultimately come to this point where he'd be a quote spot starter. Now he has an opportunity to go even further than that and not just prove me right, but prove me, I don't know, like a genius. Is that far? Is that fair? Can I go?
Yeah, that's fair.
And he starts with New York. So you're right. I don't know about Daniel Jones. Saquon Barkley, of course, limited in touches right now. I'm going Washington. We're both going Washington. Football team gets a win coming off of a loss against I almost said San Diego, the Los Angeles Chargers.
There you go.
All right, next one here is that Cincinnati against Chicago game that I mentioned earlier. Of course, we know Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon. We're very familiar with the way that they played. Sunday Night Football did not end well for Chicago. Of course, they came to another loss for the NFC North as the group as a division finished 0-4. Chicago had a little bit of life with David Montgomery, but they also did not throw the ball beyond 15 yards even once last week.
And that is why they will lose this game because
Joe Burrow will. He definitely will.
Last I checked, Andy Dalton is still starting. I haven't heard anything from Nagy on that change, so I'm taking the Bengals.
Revenge game, by the way. Big revenge game here. We got to point that out.
Good point. That doesn't really help me at all because I'd still Andy Dalton. So give me the Bengals.
I'm going to take Cincinnati as well, but I think that this is the turning point game. I think this is the damage game, right? Where Matt Nagy's finally like, all right.
Oh, please no. I want the every single week the media hate all over the Bears every single week.
I think it's going to be this week. I think either Justin Fields comes in late or next week is where we get the change, because if you're not throwing the ball 15 yards downfield, really, that's your game plan. And Montgomery's playing well, by the way, Allen Robinson.
That first drive last week was so Bears. It was perfect. Yeah. Montgomery long run sets him up in the red zone. Immediately Dalton throws a pick.
All right, so both of us are in on Cincinnati over the Bears. Next one here, Houston at Cleveland. Fairly easy pick. I mean, we don't have to bet against the spread here, so I think we're both on Cleveland.
I think it's funny that how many times have you had a team 0-1 versus 1-0, and the 0-1 team is a 13-point favorite? Not often. Give me the Browns though.
Yeah, I'll take the Browns as well. They obviously need this one. If Houston somehow gets this win, by the way, Cleveland burns. It's gonna be crazy. So
yeah, Jadeveon Clowney revenge game. Just thinking of all the revenge games out there.
I love that. That should be a segment, just revenge games.
I'm going to be trying to think of one for every game here. We'll see if I can get
all
one.
right, the next one on the docket here is the Los Angeles Rams head to Indianapolis to face Carson Wentz. Of course, Indianapolis is coming off of a loss. Matthew Stafford coming off of that impressive debut. I think you have to lean the Rams, given what they showed offensively and defensively last week. And, Indianapolis, I know we give them a lot of credit for their roster building, but have they won that many games lately? Can we even be confident picking Indianapolis against?
They went They went to the
Competitive
playoffs
opponent.
last year, but I still take the Rams here, and I still don't believe in Carson Wentz. Outside of 2017, he's been very mediocre. So
Yeah, I'm going to take the Rams here too. This is a fairly easy one for me. And I guess my point here is that I don't think that the Colts in recent memory have lived up to the pedigree that I think that we've kind of given them credit for. Um, that's my point here. So I'm going to take the Rams. We'll see what happens. Next one here, Buffalo against Miami. Miami is not just a punch, an easy walkover team anymore. Of course, they won last week behind Tua Tagovailoa
there
over
you go.
Mac Jones in the Alabama Bowl, 17-16. Uh, Buffalo coming off of that horrid loss to Pittsburgh, in which, you know, I think they had an opportunity to win that football game and they blew it a couple of different ways. The defense and TJ Watt was just too much for them. They're going to be looking for blood. This is also a divisional matchup, right? So that much more important. Does Buffalo get it done this week to move it back to 500?
Yes, give me the Bills. I think there's no way that offense lays 2 eggs in a row.
Right. Now, that's the only reason I'm going Buffalo here, like so convincingly, is because I just don't like the immediate kind of overreaction was like that Josh Allen last season was a fluke or something or another. It's really hard to fluke to 4,300 yards and 40 plus touchdowns. That just doesn't really happen. So they're not going to do that twice in a row. You're right. I think Stephon Diggs gets going as well. I'm going to take Buffalo here pretty confidently. Next one here is another AFC East divisional matchup. That's New England. Mac Jones gets a second chance to get his first win against Zach Wilson's Jets. So one rookie quarterback is going to get on the board this week for sure. Is it going to be Zach Wilson or is it going to be Mac Jones?
Well, one rookie quarterback is playing against Bill Belichick. So give me the Patriots because of that.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Patriots for the same reason. I think that Bill Belichick is ultimately going to be the difference in all of these games where it's kind of close, right? Like you've got Dante Hightower back. You've got some nice pieces defensively. New England is a quality football team if they get quality play from Mac Jones. And I think that there's an argument that he's been the most consistent of the 3 quarterbacks through 4 quarters of play. Like in terms of the results that he's giving you on a play-to-play basis,
Yeah.
I'm more confident in Mac Jones than I am in the other guys at this point in time. He's less erratic or he's not as turnover heavy or what have you. So I'm going to take Mac Jones to be the first of the group to get a victory here. I think they lead. He takes the victory here over the Jets on the road. Next one here. San Francisco against Philadelphia. Now, last week, I think this would have been a laugher if we were picking this game. We would have confidently said San Francisco and move forward. Jalen Hurts, man. My goodness.
Look good. Look good.
Devontae Smith gets his first touchdown in his first game, as well as Jalen Waddle and Jamar Chase. I think all those rookie number ones got
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
Pretty crazy. But we're focused here on Philadelphia. Lot better offensively than I think a lot of us gave them credit for. Nick Sirianni, not nearly as much of a joke as I think a lot of us thought he might be. But they're still playing San Francisco. Now, they are down Raheem Mostert. Elijah Mitchell, not a joke, though, either. Who gets it done in this one? Are we going to see Trey Lance some more? Does Jimmy G get it done? What happens here?
I'm going to go against the grain and take Philly. I think I believe in Jalen Hurts quite a bit, actually. I'm seeing he's got the leadership quality to him, I think. And it seems like his team really wants to play for him. And when it's time to make a big play, and he's got to escape the pocket. He does so, but it's so like in a calm manner that I don't know. I just love watching it. So I'll take Philly. I know that's probably the underdog pick, but I'm going to do it anyway.
This is a banner opportunity for Jalen Hurts. If you think about it, right? A key NFC opponent, right? If it comes down to wild cards later on, keeping in mind, of course, that the NFC West is extremely competitive, and if Philadelphia, for whatever reason, is not able to overcome Washington or New York, or it's not New York, Dallas, I suppose, in their own division, this matchup could matter come week 17. And this is an opportunity for Jalen Hurts to really say, hey, I'm not just, a one-hit wonder. I'm doing this against competitive teams. I'm going to pick against them. I love the opportunity, though. I do like Jalen Hurts, especially as a character, right? Like he deserves this type of victory. Like he works so hard for everything that he's earned. I really like the personal. It's a tough pick for me. I think Kyle Shanahan's able to dissect this defense enough. San Francisco continues to roll. I think they're back to closer to what they were 2 years ago than what they were, last year. So next one here, Las Vegas and Pittsburgh. Now, these are 2 teams that are coming off of what I would definitely considered to be upset victories. I don't think anyone thought Vegas was going to win, and I don't think most people thought Pittsburgh was going to beat Buffalo. Now they square off head-to-head here. Key AFC matchup in week 2. Roethlisberger, interesting. I don't really think he's particularly great. Najee Harris, not the best debut. Definitely not a rookie of the year caliber debut, I'll say. But defensively, my goodness. TJ Watt, what they're doing, in the defensive backfield, extremely dangerous defensively. They're going to give Las Vegas a lot to handle. But Derek Carr, man,
I'm buying Derek Carr. I'm buying Derek Carr. I'm buying the Raiders. I'm picking them over the Steelers. I also still don't believe in the Steelers as a complete unit. Obviously, I believe in that defense, but I don't think the offense is good enough. So I think the Raiders will put up just enough points to win.
So to me, this comes down to one question, and it's, which team do you believe in more? Because both of these teams have very glaring questions, right? They were upset wins last week for a reason. Roethlisberger, I don't know. Derek Carr, I don't know. Like, these are glaring questions at the most important position in football for both of these teams. Things that I do know is that Pittsburgh has the pedigree. They have the long history of excellence. They have Mike Tomlin, who I still believe is an excellent coach, even if he hasn't been, Super Bowl champion in quite some time.
They got John Gruden, man, in Las Vegas.
I suppose, but my point is that
I know.
My point ultimately comes down to the fact that Pittsburgh has the pedigree where Vegas does not. And I'm going to take the defense to get into Derek Carr's head because I don't think he's great. I think he's very good. I just don't think he's great. So I'm going to take Pittsburgh, and we're going to split again here. All right, next one. This one I think we'll agree on, though. New Orleans coming off of actually another upset victory over Green Bay, or at least a victory that I don't think most of us were supposing would happen, given all the things that Aaron Rodgers said this offseason and the expectations coming into this year. New Orleans gets that win, and now they square off against Carolina and Matt Rule. So an interesting situation with Sam Darnold going to be in Carolina. They were competitive last week. I don't want to say, formidable by any means. New Orleans certainly looked a lot better in all phases, but anything can happen in an interdivisional matchup, NFC South matchup here. Who you got in this one?
Give me the Saints. They look like a much better team right now. And if Jameis is actually good, then I might be very wrong about the Saints.
Yeah, this is a situation where it comes down to Jameis, right? He threw 5 touchdowns last week, extremely efficient 5 touchdowns, by the way. I don't think that's going to happen again. Same thing with Chandler Jones. I mean, it's kind of a rule of 5. It's not going to happen twice in a row, probably. But I don't think that, I don't think Carolina is going to be able to get enough done against this Saints defense, which, Marshawn Lattimore's looked very good. They're definitely getting a pass rush. I'm going to take New Orleans here as well, pretty confidently. Teddy, coming off of a victory last week, hard-earned victory. He's establishing himself as a leader. I know.
We don't got to talk about this one.
Denver
They're playing the Jags. No.
Well, with Trevor Lawrence,
that's insulting to the Teddy Bridgewater. No.
I'm gonna go Denver.
Okay. Good. I was gonna say, are you gonna keep going?
The only reason is that now they have credibility with Trevor Lawrence, and
they do. And I get it. I'm messing with you. It's fair because I think Lawrence is gonna put up a bunch of yards this year because they're gonna be it's gonna be garbage time mode all year for Jacksonville.
Kind of like when it was against Denver, though. I think Denver's defense is the worst nightmare for Trevor Lawrence. The creativity on this defense. Yeah.
I'm just saying, in terms of garbage time yards the whole season, it's going to be like, 2015 when Bortles led the league in touchdown passes because of that exact reason. So, But yeah, I think the Broncos win this one pretty easily.
All right, Denver for both of us. Move on to the next one here. Atlanta against Tampa Bay. It's interdivision. I don't think there's a whole lot to say on this one either. We're both
Tampa.
Rolling with Tampa. All right, on to the last grouping here. Just a few left here. Dallas and the Chargers. This one should be competitive. Dallas looked a lot better than I think a lot of us thought in their opening night matchup. And the Chargers, they get it done in crunch time. They did not fall on their faces. How about that, right? And
I love the that's kind of how it is for both teams, right? Both teams have been the last few years, decade really, have been great at finding ways to lose, kind of like the Vikings, but I'm going to go with the Chargers. I think they're the better team overall. I don't believe in Mike McCarthy. So that's kind of the main reason. Although I do think there'll be a lot of points scored in this game.
So I agree that Dallas's offense was great last week, right? We did just see the news today that DeMarcus Lawrence is out indefinitely with an injury. So that hurts. I'm a believer in Justin Herbert, and I like Justin Herbert. So I'm going to go with the Chargers here. I just don't think that Dallas has enough defensively without Lawrence to stop this offense enough. So I'm going to go Chargers. All right. Tennessee needs a rebound. They're heading to Seattle, which at least as when we were growing up or getting older, I should say, was one of the hardest places to play in the NFL. Not where you want to head coming off of an upset loss or an upset loss. I can say that, right?
Yeah.
Russell Wilson looked very good last week. My goodness, Tyler Lockett, a couple of amazing plays from him. DK Metcalf doing his thing. Looks like Chris Carson's going to be continuing to be a bowling ball. Tennessee, old school offense. Derrick Henry did not look good last week. Julio Jones got yelled at by his coach.
I mean, Seattle might score 50.
Quiet.
Seattle might score 50 in this game. Because this offense, super efficient last week. Titans defense is not good. So I think Seattle puts up at least 40 and wins this game.
I'm not going to go so far as 40. I love that pick though. That's bold. But
I'll bet that team total over 100%.
Yeah, it's what sucks is that every time that happens, right, we don't get the full dosage of Derrick Henry and his greatness. And this is honestly,
sucks because I do have him in a league, and I felt that last week when they were trailing by 15 plus the whole time.
You want to know the reason why Derrick Henry won't get the triple crown of 2,000 yards? This is the reason right here, is that there's going to be teams that are going to run up the score so much that you can't use him. So I think Seattle does that this week as well. I would probably say that this is, a confident win for Seattle, maybe 2 scores.
Yep.
All right. Last couple here. Kansas City against Baltimore. Again, another situation. Baltimore upset last week. You definitely do not want to be facing Patrick Mahomes, but you do get to play at home. Does that give them any type of a chance? I know that we always confidently pick the Chiefs here, but Cleveland last week came very close. Can Baltimore get over that hump?
No, well, not against the Chiefs. The Chiefs are. I'm not picking the Chiefs every week. I will just pick them every week until something crazy happens.
Well, something crazy almost happened last week, but it didn't happen. I think it's what's most important here. I'm going to take Kansas City as well. I don't think this means that Baltimore's out of it, though, by the way. Like, this is not a situation for them where they need to win this game or it's all over. But this one, this would be a nice one to have for sure coming off of that big loss last week, that heartbreaking one against Vegas. Last one here, we round out with the NFC North on Monday night. Like I said earlier, Detroit, they go to Lambeau Field. They will get all the wrath of Aaron Rodgers. I think generally we probably wouldn't talk about this one and kind of just go full throttle on Green Bay. But given what happened last week, given what Detroit showed in terms of their ability to show points, Green Bay's ability to not score any points.
I'm certainly more intrigued in this game than I was prior to last Sunday. Packers are still winning. That's still my pick, but it's like I'm not completely dismissing it, and I kind of want to see because like last year, like I said, the Packers had that game at Tampa last year where they just same thing. They barely showed up, and the rest of the year they were dominant. So I want to know, okay, is this team going to be dominant again and win by 14 plus points in this game? Or is there something there to kind of maybe it's the locker room chemistry with the whole Rodgers thing, or maybe it's him just kind of going, getting to that point in his career where he's a step behind. I don't know what it is, but I'll be paying attention to that part. But I will take the Packers.
Yeah, I'm going to take Green Bay as well. The only reason why I asked the question is just because Green Bay last week didn't score a touchdown. And I just wanted to make sure that we highlighted that once again on the show.
Fair enough. Oh, absolutely. I love that.
They were not good at all last week. And because the Vikings also lost, we didn't have the opportunity to truly gloat. And so I just wanted to point out one more time, Green Bay didn't even score a touchdown last week. So we have to have this conversation, but ultimately, we're both going Green Bay. They beat Detroit, and that rounds out the week. So hopefully those picks are better than our 7-9 picks of last week, and we're back over 500. Any final thoughts, final bold predictions, general ideas, things that you've been thinking about, anything that we missed before we close out the show here?
I don't know. Other than, I just think this is the must-win game for the Vikings this season. So I will throw my towel in for the season if they lose this game.
Interesting point. I don't have anything super fun. I was trying to think of like something that really impressed me last week or something that really stood out. The first thing that came to my mind was Deebo Samuel. My goodness, I did not expect him to be as good as a catching wide receiver as he was last week specifically. And of course, he's also top 3 in yardage in the NFL after last week. So he looked a lot more dangerous than I thought he was going to be. I think I was on the Brandon Ayuk train, and it seems like
what happened to him?
he's in the doghouse, and it seems like Deebo Samuel's going to be the guy. I mean, 150 plus yards. I don't care who it's against. That's a hell of a debut. Maybe something. This is a major turning point for him. And if you have him in fantasy,
Oh, one more thing to watch too is KJ Osborne fulfilling that number 3 role again. I'm very curious about that because he was pretty darn good against Cincinnati.
If he gets, how many targets does he need to get this week for us to very confidently call?
I mean, like 7. I mean, 7. Something like that.
He had 9 last week.
Yeah,
so.
7.
Fair enough. All right.
I mean,
so
if he's if he's the 3rd most targeted receiver in the game. That's
I guess, yeah, it's kind of a fair point. Yeah, it's more about percentage here than it is about the actual volume stat.
Yeah.
Weird how that works out. We've only been talking about that for what, 5 years?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So high target share for KJ Osborne this week. We're betting on it. We'll see what happens with D-Day Westbrook as well. Until then, make sure to check out the rest of the Climbing the Pocket podcast network. Everyone's, I think there's multiple podcasts that go up, and then there's also live shows Monday through Friday. Make sure to check that out, see what the other guys on the team are doing there. Daily Norseman, of course, you get their, the content, written content, as well as our, our podcast network that shows up on there. Drop us a comment. We love reading that stuff, positive, negative, whatever. It's always hilarious for me. I have a good time with it. So iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, wherever else you listen to your podcast. You can also find us on YouTube as well if you prefer to watch the show instead of listen to it. So with all that said, hopefully the Vikings can prove us wrong here and get something done against Arizona this week and get back to 500. But if not, we'll be here to talk about it and we can cry together. So thanks for listening, folks, and we'll catch you next week.